So we can get going? Okay. All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Health Nights at Kettering Seventh-day Adventist Church. We're all glad you're here. We're also glad you're watching on live stream. This will be recorded and be put on the church's YouTube site as well. Before we begin, I'd just like to offer a word of prayer, if you don't mind. Dear Lord, thank you for this break in the middle of the week. Thank you for the opportunity that we can learn more about health, because you want us to be more healthy. You said in John 10:10 that you want us to have abundant life, and that's what you want to give us. Let's find ways to do that. Also, thank you for all the people here. Thank you for the ladies that are cooking a demo for us as well. And just bless all these efforts, dear Lord. In your name, amen. The first thing we're going to do, if you guys don't mind, you can kind of walk over there. You're going to watch, and then we get to, better yet, taste what the ladies are making for us. Then we'll come back here and have a short lecture. All right, so let's go get some food.
Oh, it's a demo first. Oh, I haven't. Good evening, everyone. We're so glad you're here. I just want to introduce this. The recipe is called Coconut Sweet Potato Lentil Soup. And it's out of this cookbook that actually Sandy Peebles, somebody from our church, shared with me after my husband was diagnosed with some autoimmune stuff. So this book, she talks about how she cooked her way out of chronic autoimmune disease. So it has a lot of suggestions in it, and I found this recipe, and I've made it multiple times over and over. So it's one of my favorites. But my disclaimer is if you don't like coconut and if you don't like, that curry flavor, it might be a little much for you. So I'm so sorry, but it's one of my favorites. So the first thing that we do, it's. And
I want to add, it's vegan.
Yes,
it's vegan and gluten-free as well.
So, and it's really simple. So first things first, and we've already kind of done, I had started heating up the water. So you put 5 cups of water and 1 cup of lentils, and you start boiling the water. So once... Dry lentils, correct. Yeah, so it's just, and I bought everything at Kroger's and Walmart. So everything that I found, except for the last ingredient, we do use the sweet white miso, and you found that at
Whole Foods
today. So,
yeah.
So the first thing is now the recipe says that you rinse and soak your lentils overnight in a seaweed called kombu. She does that because it adds nutrients and it actually lessens the gas from the beans, okay? So, but lentils are something that you don't necessarily have to do that with. And once he kind of healed from his process, I stopped soaking my lentils. So I just cook the lentils, and I don't use the kombu every time because it does come in a bag, and if you don't use it on a regular basis, I just feel like you're not using it as much. But it's there, it's in the recipe. You can use it. You don't have to. We're not using the kombu, and I didn't soak the lentils overnight.
And then the other thing to prevent the gassiness is what we're going to do here, and we're going to skim off the top of the soup. And there's this like foamy stuff that, I don't know if you've cooked beans and lentils and legumes, that kind of thing. But it gets this kind of foamy top on it, and so that's what's gas producing. So yeah. We want to...
I mean, it's not the end of the world, right?
Yeah, you can have extra.
So... Should we just add the rest of the stuff?
Yeah.
Okay.
So to that, we want to add in the sesame oil. Actually, we're going to, the sesame oil, which is right there. And that's going to be 2 tablespoons. And then we have 3 cloves of garlic. I'm going to hold that. And Greta has this wonderful garlic press that she was telling me about yesterday, where you don't have to take the skin off. I was not aware of that. What I like to do is I buy the frozen little cubes. I don't know if you guys have seen those, but they sell them at, well, that too. And then they sell them in the freezer section, the little cubes you can just pop right out, they sell at Trader Joe's or whatever.
Which I've never done that before.
My little plug for Trader Joe's. There it is. Okay.
I'll be doing that next time. But this is nice. This is...
Okay.
Pretty easy too.
Yeah, and it smells wonderful when you put it in there. Okay. And then to that, we're going to add an onion. The recipe calls for half an onion. The original recipe, we put a whole one in. We're just going to play it by ear today. Whatever Greta's feeling like doing right now, she's going to put in.
I don't think we're going to have enough space in our pot.
Yeah, we're kind of limited with our pot.
I'm going to put half an onion in today.
Perfect. And then the sweet potatoes, we just chopped up, what is it, 2?
Yeah. It says, yeah,
2 to 3 medium, so that's too large, right?
Yes.
So we're going to put in whatever our pot is going to allow while we splash it all over the place. That's the fun part. And then to that, we're going to add in curry powder and turmeric. So that's going to be 2 tablespoons of curry powder.
This is an ingredient that the recipe does say you can leave out if you don't like curry. So it's if you want it just to be a milder soup and you're not a curry fan, you can leave it out. Or you can put less in. But I like curry.
And then 1 tablespoon of turmeric. We can use fresh or dried. This is the dried, of course. Yeah. Although I think the fresh would be kind of neat, huh?
Yeah, I've never actually ground it down, but you can grind it and make it.
Yeah, it comes like, I don't know if you've seen fresh turmeric, but it looks like ginger, fresh ginger, and then you can just grate it in there. All right, and stir that all together. And then you're going to bring this to a boil, which...
Yeah, like all of this at this time is just going to, once it's at a boil, it'll come down, you'll turn it down and let it just simmer and and when the sweet potatoes are done is when everything's done. The sweet potatoes are usually the last one. The onions and the lentils cook pretty quick. So once those sweet potatoes are done, there's a couple of final ingredients that you throw in at the end. I guess we could talk through it. I don't know if we should put them, I don't want to put them in because I put them in at the end after this is all, once it's heated up and it stews a little bit. Okay, so the final things that you add to the recipe are the 1 cup of coconut milk, 1 cup. Okay, I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna go back to what, actually once it's hot, you take a little bit of this soup out and I would put like a little bit of broth into this bowl. And then that's what I would dilute the miso in. Because the miso, if you use miso, you don't want it to boil because it'll all the elements of miso, all the benefits of it will just boil off. So it's usually once it's done boiling and you reduce it down, you can, thin out that miso because it comes in a paste. Yeah. So the miso comes in a paste and it calls for 2 heaping tablespoons of miso. And it just adds a nice flavor and adds the benefits of it. It's good for us. So, and you can get that at the health food store. So I would dilute that, add that back into the soup, and then the final ingredients are 1 cup of the coconut milk, it says 2 tablespoons of tamari. I usually just put 1 in, and then 2 tablespoons of marin, and I just usually put 1. And you don't have to either. Sometimes I don't have those ingredients at home, and I don't even need them. Like I like the soup just as is, honestly. So if you have the miso and you want to spend, a little bit extra and have those ingredients, if you have tamari, I use the gluten-free tamari. They have, it's similar to soy sauce. You can use Bragg's as well, but the gluten-free tamari is what I use. You don't need it. It just adds flavor. The coconut milk I definitely put in at the end. So if there's one ingredient, if you don't have those final 4, I do the coconut milk because it just brings out all the other flavors, and then salt. And it does this recipe I think has way too much. I don't put it in, it says 1 tablespoon. I probably put in a teaspoon. So, but I would just go slow to see the flavors as and it's at the very end. You don't want to cook it and use it in the beginning. Just add it at the end. So, yeah. Is there any questions? I know we kind of talked through that kind of fast, but as far as the demo, it's very easy, and I think we chose it because we were trying to think of a soup because it's coming into the fall season, and it is delicious. So, and we have samples for everybody to taste. So.
Yeah, so the
long.
recipe that we got it from said 1.5 hours. I think we cooked it probably like 45 minutes.
I would say 40,
and
yeah.
It depends on how big the pieces are. So.
That's a good question. It depends on the piece of size, and it depends on how much of a batch you're making and how high. Sometimes you can boil it a little. You can boil it, but I don't. Typically, I turn it down so it's just kind of the longer those seasons simmer, I think it tastes better, but like it still comes out too. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, not too long. So
Another thing I was going to add, which might be kind of interesting, is putting the onion and the spices together, like sauteing that together first, and then adding it to your lentils, which I always think, sauteing that brings out the flavor of the spices a little more. So that's another option too.
that is an option because I haven't tried that, but that would be good because you can do the sesame oil with the or sesame oil one that you don't want to.
Yeah, you don't want to cook it a lot. Yeah, I think you just like in a little bit of olive oil
so
or whatever, and just kind of bring out the flavor of the spices.
Flavors of the spices.
Yeah, and then put it in there. Yes.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You could definitely do this in the crock pot, the beginning stuff, and then once it's all done, I would add those final things. Yeah. No, for sure. Yeah. So, yep.
Oh, and Joyce has it all served up over here.
Yes, and if you want the name of the person's name, that didn't make it on the piece of paper, but it's definitely from this cookbook, Mee McCormick. I think she published this book, so yeah.
Everyone try it. Then give immediate feedback.
Immediate feedback. only immediate positive.
Tomatoes if you want.
I did peel the potato.
Have you ever done it with just scrubbing them and then keeping the peel on?
I've never done the peel because I've actually never liked the peel on a sweet potato, no matter what I've done.
Yeah, that's where all the nutrients are supposed to be, right?
So I haven't done that either.
I mean, it's kind of a
I really haven't. It's
peel,
tough.
but I didn't know if it would work.
It's a little different than a white potato.
Maybe you should try it. I mean, what's the point? I mean, why not try it anyway? But
The worst is you could spit out the peel.
Right. That's the worst that can happen.
Or not.
I feel like we should, you want to add the salt to it later?
it doesn't matter. I think once it's gonna go. It's gonna go.
Makes it like a meal. Makes the salad to the next round. Thanks a lot. That was good. Kind of like this. Yeah, if you could take your soup back and then we can start the lecture.
I was trying to look for it. I'm sure it's somewhere. I would assume it's somewhere, but again, like it wasn't in a bookstore. You know what I mean? Since she's self-published.
I know, I have some notes and some other books about
Oh, that was definitely. I know. Or like so.
All right, after you get your soup, you can come on back. We'll kind of get going here. So, what have you people thought about the soup so far? Really good? Okay. Yeah, actually, it's interesting. Usually, you don't have curry together with miso. So, I'm really interested to try it because I like both those flavors. Any other comments or thumbs up about the soup? So good? Okay, awesome. Love to hear that. Okay, so we're going to talk about some diet myths that are really killing you or really hurting you. And we'll go through these pretty quickly here. But, there's a couple of things I want to go over. Like, people think like a six-pack, your abs are made in the gym. Or they'll say something like, I'm just going to cut calories. Or sugar's not so bad. Or like, I don't eat so bad. That's pretty funny. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day. That's really controversial. You have to eat meat to be big and strong. Keto diet rocks. And then the one that we're going to spend a lot of time on really is fast food's not so bad for you. But let's get to the point here. So if you want to get a six-pack, there's a couple ways to do it. This is probably the easiest way to do it here. Now, there's something that we call the 80% rule. 80% of weight loss is from your diet. The other thing is the 80% rule goes to 80% of your health is your diet. Exercise is important, but the biggest bang for your buck is going to be what you eat, what you put inside yourself. And this is a great example. A lot of people say, I eat a bunch of garbage, but I'm going to work it off. If you have a medium McDonald's French fries, that's going to cost you 1 hour and 12 minutes in the pool to get back to zero. None of us have that kind of time to exercise enough to lose and burn off all the bad food. So if you think of these Olympic athletes like Michael Phelps, when he was swimming in the Olympics, they say he had 8,000 calories a day. That's great. He was working out for like 10 hours a day. Most of us here, we're trying to get our 20 minutes in. So there's no way we can defeat a really bad diet by exercise. It just can't happen. Now, the other thing that's really important about metabolism is we keep thinking, if we lose weight, we'll keep on going down. At some point, though, what happens to your weight loss journey? What do we call that? Plateaus. All right, so there's a great study. This is from The Biggest Loser. They followed people, I think, from season 6 before they went to the camp and 6 years afterward. And this is basically what they found here. I'm going to walk up to the screen. So, what they found is everyone lost about 100 pounds at camp. When they went back to reality, everyone gained about 100 pounds back, except for one guy. The yellow guy right here, he had gastric bypass surgery once he went back to reality. Now, has anyone watched the show Biggest Loser? Okay, so you quit your job, or you don't have a job. You go to camp. There's a chef there that will make you organic, healthy meals. And it's like, I think they do 1,200 calories a day. And then you have a personal trainer. You work out twice a day. That would be my vacation. I would love to do that. The problem is when you leave the camp, you come back, you have to work, shop, cook for yourself, and you don't have a personal trainer. And you get a rebound. Now, it's not just the lifestyle change. What they measured here was metabolism. And if you look on this graph, what they found is that everyone's metabolism, except this one guy, dropped. Metabolism is how you're burning calories in your body. And there's two parts of this. One is as you get smaller, there's less body mass, so your metabolism has to go down because there's less of you. And that makes sense. The other thing we found out is the more you diet and cut calories, your body starts getting really smart and it wants to preserve calories. So it will slow down your metabolism to not burn excess calories. So immediately, as you start losing weight, you're fighting against yourself. And that's really tough to do. On the flip side, same thing with exercise. The more you exercise, you have a plateau as well because your body gets more efficient. And so it stops burning as many calories. So you can't even burn off the calories when you exercise. So it's really, really tough. Now, there's some ways to get around this, and we're going to talk about that as well. Now, who thinks sugar is addictive? Better yet, who's addicted to sugar? Okay, there's lots of honest people here. I love seeing that. All right. So here's a really great study. This is a functional MRI of your brain, and this is when you eat sugar. The pleasure centers in the middle of your brain are lit up. When you get cocaine, the same exact pleasure centers in your brain are lit up. So sugar has the same type of reward mechanism that cocaine does, and that's why we like it so much. All right. Now, sugar, though, is a huge, huge problem. And the biggest source of sugar in the United States is how we drink it. If you look at here, 35% of our sugar intake in America is soda pop, G2, anything you get at Starbucks, etc. So you can make a huge drop in your calories by just getting rid of everything except for water. Now, one thing that's crazy here is look at the bottom on fruit juice. So about 10% of Americans' total extra sugar intake is juice. So who likes to give their kids or grandkids 100% organic orange juice? No one wants to admit that. Okay, there are a couple of people. All right, and then typically what I'm saying is that's probably not the best thing to do. When I say that, I always have an angry mom or grandma come up afterward and say, are you telling me that I am not a good parent or grandparent because I'm giving my kid 100% organic orange juice? And what I tell them? Yes. No, I'm kidding. Yeah. But the point is, they don't need the excess calories. Now, there is a couple of studies where if you drink 1 cup of 100% vegetable or fruit juice, it does decrease the chance of getting dementia. All right, so there's a trade-off there, but most people don't need the extra calories. Now, the one big thing and the number one source that we just saw on that slide is basic soda pop. There's a really interesting study done around the world, done by the CDC, and it looked at how many extra people die just by soda intake in the countries that they're in. Now, the number one country with excess soda death is Mexico. What do people in Mexico love to drink? Coke. Their Coke is so good, we import Mexican Coke to America because they use cane sugar instead of high fructose corn syrup, and we like that better. So we actually get their Coke to bring it over here. Now, what's important for us, though, is country number 4 is the United States. So we're talking United States. So about 124 people per million die per year, probably based just on excess soda intake in the United States. So we can actually cause people to live longer and not die by cutting back on soda, which is pretty crazy. Now, people are always saying that their diet's really good. When they come to my office, I say, what do you eat? I do a quick dietary history, and I go, your diet sounds really good. Can you do me a favor? And they go, what? And I go, can you document every single thing you eat for 2 weeks and come back to my office? What do? They cancel the appointment. Because after they realize they lied to me and they write down everything they ate for 2 weeks, they're embarrassed to come back. But if you really get strict with what you eat, you find out that our diet's actually SAD. SAD stands for Standard American Diet, and that is actually a real abbreviation that we use in medical literature. Just to go over some of the crazy things in the American diet, almost 60% of what Americans eat is what we call ultra-processed food. A study just came out about a week ago. Eating high levels of ultra-processed food increases your chance of becoming demented. The problem that they found in the study, though, is the lead time is at least 6 to 10 years. So by the time you have problems, you wish you had made a move 6 to 10 years ago. Because once you start getting dementia, memory loss, it's incredibly hard. We have drugs, they don't work very well. So you need to intervene before you get to that point, which means you have to predict in 10 years you're gonna have a problem, which means, simply put, you should try to be as healthy as you can from this day forward, as long as you can. There's some other scary numbers here. Look at the top here. For the standard American diet, Americans eat less than 1% vegetables. When I first saw this, I go, it has to be a mistake, but it's actually the correct data. The other thing that's really crazy, I love this on the bottom, pizza. Pizza by itself is 3.5% of the whole American diet. That's amazing when you think about that. I mean, that's a juggernaut of the food industry. Now, the other thing that's controversial is you have to eat breakfast. Now, who eats breakfast in here? Okay, good. In general, that's a good thing to do. I don't eat breakfast. I like to exercise on an empty stomach, and then that's part of what my intermittent fasting cycle is. I skip breakfast, start eating at lunch, eat dinner, and shut it down again until next lunch. What they found is in the studies, almost every study except for this one says you should eat breakfast. But what they did is they did much more kind of interesting analysis, and they had what they called a social business cluster. The people that skipped breakfast were the exact same group that were always on the rush, busy, eating in the car, eating a lot of pastries and fast food. And their thought was, it may not be that skipping breakfast is bad. It may be that their hectic lifestyle, eating a bunch of garbage food, is what's really tipping them over. So they didn't think breakfast in and of itself was the answer. And I know a lot of people, especially like in the running community and the biking community, a lot of these guys skip breakfast all the time. And these are the skinniest, healthiest people, healthier than me, that I know of. All right. The other thing that people say is, I have to eat my animals. I have to get meat. I have to get protein, or I'm not going to be strong. I can't exercise. I'm going to feel weak, etc. Here's some really good personal examples of people that are vegan or plant-based. So Matt Danzig, so he actually won Ultimate Fighter. So he's an MMA fighter, mixed martial arts in the octagon. So he's really tough, really strong, and he's a vegan. Now he started doing this because milk, cheese, meat, they increase mucus production, and you have a lot more runny nose and sinus infections. So he really did it for his sinuses. And so that got a lot better. Then he felt better working out, so he just kept going. Now, the funny thing here is he was asked to be a PETA spokesperson. So the idea is it's okay to beat up on people, just not hurt animals. We're usually people laugh more, but that's okay. All right. So the other example is a guy named Scott Jurek. he's probably the most famous ultra marathoner in the United States. He's the one, I think it was 2 years ago, he ran from the south end of Appalachian Trail to the north and set the record. He did it like in 40-something days. So he does crazy stuff like that. He's won Badwater twice. Badwater is you start in Death Valley, you go 135 miles to the trailhead at Whitney. And a lot of these guys, they'll go to Whitney, the next day they'll turn around and go back 135. So we're talking about doing 270 miles in 2 days. These guys are freaks. Anyway, he's totally vegan. So if you want to be a fighter, you want to be a distance runner, you can be totally vegan. But the best example is this guy. The world's strongest man in the Guinness Book of World Records is a vegan. He went vegetarian, and since 2011, he's a vegan. And this guy has more muscles. I mean, he's like muscles on top of muscles. And he's building muscle mass, and all his protein is plant-based. So it can be done. Keto. Now, we all remember Atkins, right? Then now it's kind of moved on to keto. Actually, I just blanked on the middle. There's basically three different diets that are basically the same thing. Low carb, high protein. Excuse? Paleo, thank you. I don't know how I skipped that. But basically, to sell your diet program, you have to have it be different than the other diet program. You can't say Atkins 3. You can't say Paleo 2, because they just go back and buy Paleo 1. So you have to make it different. Now, this is a great illustration. So in World War II, all the bombers came back to Britain, and the bombers that survived were shot up in the wings and the tail section. So the engineers go, hey, we should reinforce the wings and the tail section, because then more planes will make it back. And there's a Jewish engineer who goes, that's wrong. What airplanes were not making it back? The ones that are getting shot in the cockpit with the pilots or the engines. And what they call this is survivorship bias, where when things survive, we think that's the reason why it survived. And keto has a lot of things in it that make people excited at the beginning. It makes sense, but doesn't work that well. So we're going to go through that real quickly. So on the left side, we'll talk about keto real quick. Basically, to get 1 gram of carbohydrate from your belly, intestine, into your body, it takes 4 molecules of water. So when you drop your carbs, you always lose water. And people love to lose weight quickly. So that's why I love keto. The second thing is when you drop carbs in America, you're dropping mostly ultra-processed foods. So you're going to lose weight anyway. If you just said, I'm going to eat more plant-based whole foods, you get the same benefit. Here. Now, what really happens to most of the patients that I take care of that go on keto is their lipids go crazy. Cholesterol goes very high, and then we got to deal with that. And long-term cholesterol is not good for you. Now, the funny thing is the idea is I have low carbs, I have high fat, I'm teaching my body to burn fat and get ketotic. If you talk to most people that are doing keto, they don't measure if they get ketotic, so they don't even know if they're achieving what they want. I have maybe 2 friends that have the urine dipsticks or the blood test. Everyone else goes, I think I'm ketotic, and that's probably not good enough. Now, another way to jumpstart your metabolism and burn more fat is something called IF, or intermittent fasting, which is what I do, and a lot of people do this. And it's actually pretty easy. One of the big benefits is fasting shrinks your stomach. You physically get a smaller stomach, so when you eat, you get full faster, so you have to stop eating, because that full feeling, most people don't like that feeling. The other thing, there's a hormone called leptin. At the beginning, it goes up, but then it goes down. Actually, it's the other way. It goes down, then it goes up. Leptin makes you less hungry. It tells your brain you don't have to eat. And that's why you probably heard some of your friends, or you've done it, who's fasted for a long period of time. So after like a day or two, the hunger goes away. That's because leptin is kicking in and it's telling your brain you don't have to eat, you're not hungry. Wouldn't it be great if you were walking around and like you look at stuff and you're like, I'm just not hungry? Then that takes no willpower. Your body is biochemically made to not make you hungry. That's what's great about intermittent fasting. The other thing is when you have a low-level stress in your body, it makes your body ready to handle the next stressor that hits it. So the big examples are intermittent fasting. You fast, then you eat. Exercise, you stress your system, then you rest, recover. And it sounds crazy, but sleep. You wake, then you go to sleep. Those kind of cycles on and off really help build up your system to tolerate more stress. Now, if you don't sleep, you're all irritated, edgy, can't handle anything. If you don't exercise, same thing. If you're eating all the time, you get sluggish as well. The interesting thing is, if you fast for 8 or 12 hours, there's a little bit of ketosis, a little bit of fat burning. The longer you make that period, the more fat burning you're going to have. So the comparison is very nice here between keto and intermittent fasting. I'm just going to skip this for time here. Now, the other thing that fasting is really important is insulin. So don't raise your hand, but if anyone here has been on insulin or you have a friend or family member on insulin, the typical pattern is you get on insulin, you gain weight, you get on more insulin, you gain weight, you get on more insulin. When my patients get on insulin, that's when you have to have the talk and say, we need to do everything we can right now to get you off of insulin because this is only going to go one way. And the thing is, insulin is what we call a growth hormone. It will make you grow by having your body store excess calories as fat, which is the last thing we want. So the less insulin we have in our body, the better. Now, what we're seeing here, though, is the more times you eat, you get a sugar spike, and then you have to get an insulin spike to push the sugar in your body. So if you fast, you can reduce that. And then what's really great is when you have a longer fasting period, you get to a really low insulin state. You want as least amount of insulin as you can get in your system. So you look at this, if you just drop a meal, or you fast one time a week where you have no eating, you'll be at a super low insulin state for that time period. Now, I don't recommend you just jump into it, but there are ways you can slowly get into intermittent fasting that's tolerable. I tried to do the 5-2 method, and I was so grumpy I gave it up in less than a week. I do the 16-8, time one, and I can do that easily. So there's just different ways to get into it. And this is what we just talked about. Basically, insulin causes weight gain, causes more insulin resistance, makes you take more insulin, causes more weight gain, and that's just a spiral you do not want to get into. Fast food. So if you look at the top here, Pennywise is saying, hey, Ronald McDonald, you're not even scary. And Ronald McDonald's saying, man, I've killed more people than you. Okay, so McDonald's and all fast food, pretty scary place to be. Now, there's a bunch of studies, I'm not going to go over all of these, but if you eat fast food one time per week, so one time out of your 21 chances to eat, you eat fast food, you're going to gain 7 more pounds per year going forward. That's just one time a week. Now, I know everyone's busy, and you got to be taking the grandkids and kids around to soccer games and stuff, or you're busy, so let's just eat out tonight. That stuff keeps on stacking up. And once again, the more weight makes more insulin. That's a really bad cycle. But it's not just the food itself that's bad. It's actually the wrapping. This is a fascinating study. They actually looked at fluorohydrocarbons in the packaging material and how they leach into your food. Now, I don't know about you guys. I don't think any of us want to buy chemicals to ingest into our body that are bad for you. So on the bottom is great. There's a paper cup of water, and there's basically no transfer of chemicals using water. Now, when you go to Starbucks and you get a croissant, what does that waxy paper look like? No one gets a croissant at Starbucks? Okay. Banana bread, okay. It looks oily, and you're like, man, how did it get oily? Well, the oil from the bread gets on the paper. All the chemicals in the paper go through the oil back to the bread. It's like osmosis. All right, it will be transferred. Same thing that those weird wrappers that you eat the burgers at McDonald's and Burger King that are like aluminum on one side and the other paper on the other side that you wonder how they made this thing. Yeah, that's the same thing. It transports chemicals. I haven't been to McDonald's in so long. I believe it. Now, what's interesting, if you look at these numbers, so dessert and bread wrappers, the banana bread, the croissants, there's about a 56% transfer of chemicals into the food. Those weird wraps for the burgers, 38%. The paperboard that you hold your French fries in, all the oil from the French fries, about 20% transfer. So not only are you eating bad food, you're getting all these chemicals leach into your system, and the worst thing is you're paying for it. All right, so let's kind of wrap up here. So, I mean, don't worry about weight so much. We didn't talk about this too much in depth, but the biggest thing you want to lose is fat. And one of the best ways to lose fat, think about things like intermittent fasting, keto diet's not going to get you there. As you lose weight, your metabolism will slow down. So you have to jumpstart that. And that's why fasting helps and exercise really helps in those ways to kind of get your diet or your weight loss plateau, get you off the plateau and get you moving again. Cutting back sugar as much as possible is good for your inflammatory state, infectious risk, etc. Cutting out processed food, especially the carbs, potato chips, donuts, basically all the candy, all your soda, all those things. Also, if you want to be as strong as an ox, don't eat an ox. Eat like the ox. Be like that guy. The ox eats grass and gets really strong. Think about that as an example. And finally, drive past the drive-through. Don't go through it. Just keep on going home. All right, thank you for your attention. Is there any questions or comments? Yes. Yeah, so the question is what can you do about high insulin levels or genetically elevated hyperinsulinemia where the insulin level is always up anyway. So there are some medications that can help. One of the big ways to help is exercise. And I know it's tough for you, but as you exercise, it makes the sugar go into your cells so your body needs less insulin. So that's one of the big strategies. In a course that we do called Diabetes Undone, one of the big things is after you eat, take a 10, 15-minute walk. And that really helps get your sugars down. It's non-pharmacologic. It's just your body, your muscles are going to, even for low-level walking, your muscles need the sugar. It'll suck it out of your body. Any other questions? Yes?
Okay, it was talking about the leptin.
Mm-hmm.
So if you do intermittent fasting, let's just say that you lost the weight and everything, you gained it back, and does the weight gain cause the leptin when you start going back the other way, like to lose weight? Will you be able to get that back to the same level?
So the question is, what happens to leptin when you lose and gain weight? So the problem is there's an acute phase. When you're losing weight, the levels go down, and then you get more hungry. Chronically, it should go up and keep you less hungry. Now, if you're yo-yoing a lot, then you're probably going to have up and down leptin levels, which is going to be a problem. If you can kind of maintain kind of a steady state, then level's going to be higher and going to make you less hungry. The leptin, plus having a smaller physical stomach, really helps me, but helps a lot of people to eat less. And that's why the fasting is such a great strategy. Jerry in the back?
How often do you have to exercise? To what level?
Okay, so Jerry asked, how much exercise do you do and what kind of level to keep a reasonable metabolism? There's a bunch of ways to answer this. So the minimum amount, we'll go easy. The minimum amount of exercise you need is 15 minutes a day of brisk walking to decrease your chance of dying. So it's really a small amount. Now, the more you do, if you do 2 or 3, they just published a study, if you do 2 or 3 times the American Heart Association's recommendation for exercise, you're going to live longer and you're going to be super fit. Now, what we recommend is if you can get to about 45 minutes, 5 to 6 times a week of just even walking, that will be enough to get your metabolism up, help you lose weight, and keep you active and mobile. There's a couple of big studies where people have lost 60 pounds or more and kept it off for over 4 years, and the number one exercise was walking. But these people walk for about an hour a day in a continuous stretch. And there's another study where if you're walking a lot at work, for some reason, that doesn't have the same impact as when you walk for your exercise. So people tell me all the time at work, I walk all the time at work, and I can't lose weight. And it's like you have to carve out some time to do it separately, and it probably has to be continuous. That's where you get the bigger bang for the buck. The other thing I want to say is everyone should start off really slow. The only thing worse than not exercising is getting injured. So what I recommend for people that do nothing is exercise, take 2 days off, exercise, take 2 days off. Then after a couple of weeks when they're not sore, every other day. couple more weeks when they're really not sore, then you can hit it every day. And that's when you're doing low impact, like walking or something. Yes?
I read a number of years ago, but I didn't get the ISBN number or the name of the book on dieting. In order to diet properly, you need to eat at least 10 calories per pound of body weight. So like if I weigh 200 pounds, I would need 2,000 calories a day and exercise more to lose weight. That way your body won't go into starvation effect. But let's say you've been dieting wrong and your body's in starvation effect, which means when you go back after diet and you go to eating back normally and you start just keep gaining more weight, how do you snap your body out of starvation effect so that it's burning calories?
Yeah, so the question is like, is there a point where you get to where your body's in survival mode, starvation mode, and it's hard to lose weight, and then when you kind of refeed your body, things are a lot worse. Now that's kind of the old thinking, where if you fast for like 12 hours or you exercise without food, your body's going to take your energy from your muscles and destroy your muscles. So there's a whole bunch of data now, especially with intermittent fasting, that doesn't happen. What happens typically is what your body should do is you're not going to destroy your own muscle, you're going to go burn your own fat. And most of us, even if you are ripped to shreds, like these super runners, those guys are always burning their own fat. So even though they're like 4% body fat, that's enough fat to keep them going. I have much more than that, so I have no worries about that problem. All right. Yes? Okay, well, the question is what happens to your blood sugar levels? So we don't recommend intermittent fasting for diabetics unless they have like a Libra device or they're super good at tracking themselves, because you can crash and burn when your sugars drop. But your body, basically, if your body needs sugar, fuel, and your sugars are going low, the idea is to break down fat slowly, get out into sugar, and fuel your body. The only people that we're worried about is diabetics. Yeah, those people you have to worry about as well. Yeah.
The doctor told me to eat every 2 hours, but my blood sugar is already dropping in 2 hours. And all the videos about hyperinsulinism that I saw on YouTube said they had to eat every hour and a half, which makes me feel like I'm eating all day long, more than the every 2 hours, but it keeps your blood sugar too low.
Yeah, so the question or the comment was about keeping your blood sugars up. Yeah, that you just have to kind of monitor that and see what you can do to keep it at a minimum safe level. Yes. You both, ladies first. Brian, how are you going to do this? No.
You mentioned the 8-16
Yeah.
hour. Explain that a little bit.
Sorry, I just kind of blew by that. So there's 3 major fasting programs that have been tested. One is 16-8, and the idea is you get up to 16 hours of no food, 8 hours of fasting. And what we recommend is do like 12 hours for a couple of weeks until you're used to it, then 14, 10, then 16, 8. And you can do that like 5, 6 times a week. I try to do it 6 times a week, but because of the weekend and you're always doing stuff, it's probably 5 times a week. The other big one is 5-2. 2 times a week, you cut down your calories about 500 calories per day, and that's enough of a stress just twice a week to have all the beneficial effects that you want. The other thing is alternate day fasting, which I consider it's much more brutal. Basically, every other day, you don't eat anything except water and coffee. That's really hard to do. But all these methods, all these programs, you should slowly ease your way into it. Even the 5-2, they recommend, like you have, most Americans are about 2,400 calories a day or higher. Actually, I think the last time I checked, the average was 3,000 calories a day. People should be around 2,200. If you're losing weight, it should be 1,800 calories or less. So you want to get down, you go from 3,000 calories, you go down to like 2,000 twice a week. A couple weeks later, 1,500. A couple weeks later, 1,000. A couple weeks later, you hit your goal of 500 calories on those 2 days. And the worst thing to do is when you get hangry, you get mad, and you say, screw this program, and then you quit. So it's okay to take some time to get into the program. You gained weight, you got unhealthy over years. It's going to take some time to get healthy, and there's no shame in taking your time. Ryan?
I wanted you to address the elasticity of the stomach, because I know people can get a surgery and be down to only a spoonful or something, and then they can be back to the same size stomach. And you can reduce the size of your stomach. How fast does
So the question is, how much can you expand or shrink your stomach? What's really interesting, does anyone watch competitive eating? Like the hot dogs? Yeah, so I think it's yeah, so they have things like they eat a whole jar of mayonnaise. They do really gross things. But the guy that used to be before Joey Chestnut, who's now the dominant eater now, there's a guy named Kobayashi from Japan. And this guy was ripped to shreds. And he had his treatment, his workout strategy was he drank a ton of water and ate cabbage. And he would physically expand his stomach so he could just inhale food and not get full. Now, that takes weeks. Now, to shrink your stomach probably takes weeks as well. The interesting thing, and this goes back to habits and lifestyle, so I'm sure lots of us have had friends or family or patients that have had gastric bypass surgery. A lot of them lose a lot of weight, and a lot of them gain a lot of it back. And, you know, when your stomach is now like this big, you think that's impossible. But what happens is you just start eating the stuff you liked before, and instead of eating 3 big meals, you eat 10 small snack episodes. So you can adjust your behavior, adjust your lifestyle. You can defeat gastric bypass surgery. I've seen it a million times. Other questions? Yes.
It's just a comment. I read a book a couple years ago by, I can't remember his name, Dr. Kang. He's a nephrologist who is a proponent of intermittent fasting.
It's probably Fung.
Fung, that's
Yeah.
it. That's it. And it was very good. I enjoyed reading it, but it's a lot of the same things you're talking about.
Yeah, so
Anybody's interested in delving into it.
yeah, so the book's called Obesity Code. He also has a second book called Diabetes Code. It's very funny because his book goes through all the things that don't work, and then he has like one chapter on fasting at the very end. Then he just ends the book. It's interestingly read, but yeah, he's a big proponent of intermittent fasting. And actually, I read his research because like what was mentioned before, the old idea was you fast too long, you break down your own muscle, and there's a lot of good data that's not the case. And so then I started thinking, if that's not the case, and you're burning fat, then that's what you want to do. Yes?
You mentioned being hungry, and that's why you eat. But a lot of times we eat when we're not hungry because of stuff we see that looks good and tempting. So we're not always eating when we're hungry. So even if you get that hunger under control, you're still tempted, because of good food that's around.
Yeah, absolutely. So the comment was like, you don't always eat because of hunger. You eat convenience, or there's many other factors, stress. So the one thing that's really good is as you clean up your life and your house, you can like when we went vegan, we actually had a bunch of dead animals in the freezer and the refrigerator and stuff, and we just kind of ate through them and didn't replace them. Same thing, you can eat through your snacks, don't replace your snacks. So now in our house, the kids know they can have nuts or fruit, but no other snacks. So that's a way you can kind of make your house. So even if you want to just mindlessly nibble, you're only going to nibble on good stuff. The other thing that intermittent fasting is really helpful for is, since you're trying not to eat during a time period, you won't even snack. So you shouldn't even nibble. So, yes? So the question is, do I recommend calorie counting? There's 2 answers. For me and most guys, oh God, that's going to sound really bad. For people like me, counting calories is a bunch of extra effort and mental manipulation that's tiring. You only have so much energy per day. I don't want to use it to count calories. For a lot of other people, like my wife, they have MyFitnessPal, and it keeps them mindful. So she actually say stuff like, it's not worth the effort of inputting this food to eat that snack, so I'm not going to eat it. So it's actually a barrier to eating garbage. So it depends on your personality type. Generally, I'm kind of the person, simpler, easier, is more sustainable long-term, so I don't do it. But some people like to have some extra accountability. So whatever works for you. Yes?
Somebody had mentioned stress a minute ago. So if you have chronic stress or it's tends to, will intermittent fasting still work?
So the question is, stress, will fasting work? It's going to help. The biggest thing that we do in America is we have a problem and we address the symptom. We don't go for the root cause. So if you have stress, the thing to really do is try to mitigate or eliminate the stressor. And I know it's easy for me to say, but like when your family member's sick, your dog is dying, you don't have enough money. Did anyone get their electric bill recently? Okay, my electric bill doubled. I was shocked when I got the email. But it's hard to sometimes get rid of stressors, but if you can decrease stress or have ways, gratitude, exercise, things like that to decrease your stress level, that'll help a lot. We didn't talk about it today, but when you talk about overall health, diet's number 1, exercise number 2, sleep's number 3, 4 is de-stressing. Because when you're stressed out a lot, you have a high cortisol level, which is another growth hormone. Cortisol makes you have increased sugar. Increased sugar makes you have more insulin. That makes you have more fat. So high cortisol levels are bad for you. So people with low chronic stress is not healthy for you. Yeah.
Okay, like I have hyperinsulinism. So when I have low blood sugar, do I forget to eat? While you're having low blood sugar, your body does convert protein in your muscles to sugar instead of burning fat you stored. And so it depletes the protein from your muscles. So how do you restore the protein to your muscles?
See, in that situation, that probably shouldn't happen. We're talking about where you get the energy from. If you have high insulin, low sugar, and this goes back to the whole idea of keto or fasting. Yeah, so if your sugar's 60 and you're reloading yourself with carbs to get your sugar back up, carbs are easier to use for your body. So your body will use the carbs and it won't tap into fat, it won't tap into muscle. Because you're constantly refueling the engine. And that's why keto is so popular now, and that's why fasting is so popular. I think someone had a question. Yeah, Brian?
Wasn't a question, but a comment since somebody mentioned gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
Mentioned gratitude there. We had in our Sabbath school class, we had a thing where challenged to identify 3 things at the end of each day that they were grateful for, and do that on a daily basis. And I will admit I'm very poor at following that up. But I did it. It was good. Really good. But the other thing is I just got a quote the other day that said, "What if you woke up today with only the things you thanked God for yesterday?"
The quote is, what if you woke up today with only the things you thank God for yesterday? It'd be a pretty sparse life. Now, what's interesting is there's several gratitude studies. If you list 3 things, either by saying them out loud or writing them in a journal, it actually decreases cortisol levels, decreases blood pressure, decreases inflammatory markers. So it's not voodoo hocus pocus. It actually changes your biochemistry. So we do gratitude at the end of worship every night, and we go around the whole family, and people say at least 1 to 3 things you're happy about. The study also recommends do not go for 5 to 7 things to be happy about, because some people can't think of 5 and they get depressed. I mean, that was part of the that's a true part of the study. So if you can get to 3, just be happy about something. It's good. Yes. Yeah, so this is the hard part. And there's a study that I don't use a lot. The best study is brisk walking for 15 minutes continuous makes you live longer. There's another study that says all you need is 10 minutes. But the people in that study were running at a 10-minute mile pace. So they're actually jogging. So, and then this is going to sound bad, but that's a really slow pace for runners. For non-runners, that's pretty brisk. So that's going to be hard to do. But in all the studies, walking to the point where you're a little huffy-puffy, a little sweaty is probably the best exercise because it's sustainable, it's easy, it's super cheap. And most people do it outside. And then being outside is another factor. There's something called forest bathing. The more you get into trees, wilderness, that drops your cortisol, blood pressure, inflammatory markers as well. So, Paula, you're not that old. Come on. So Paula asked a question about what about something like cycling, even stationary bikes. Those are great. That's super low impact, gets your heart rate up, good for your joints. Yeah, cycling is great exercise. When you look at all these different studies, the 2 sports that really stand out for longevity is probably actually cycling and tennis. And the part of that is probably because it's social, you get outside. Tennis usually comes at the top because you have explosive movements, some endurance, you have to use your brain to pre-plan, and most of these people are playing doubles, so it's social. even playing singles with your buddy is still very social. Yes?
Like when I was diagnosed with hyperinsulinism, severe hypoglycemia, they call it just hypoglycemia. My blood sugar dropped like 80 points between the second and third hour on the 6-hour glucose tolerance test. I thought I was turning diabetic. My grandma had been diabetic because I was craving sweets like crazy, but I actually had the opposite problem. But the doctor told me when I'm out walking, be sure to swing your arms, and that helps your blood circulating. And to go 15 to 30 minutes because it's after 10 minutes that your body starts strengthening your heart and your lungs. So at least 15 minutes, he said. Try to go 30 and rest equal amount of time afterwards.
Yeah, so the comment is about how long to exercise. Like I said, the data, 15 minutes continuous is good. The sweet spot's probably 45 minutes to an hour. Anything beyond that, you just get more fit. So it depends on your goals.
I got one more thing to say. And 1 year I was in rehab and I couldn't walk more than 5 minutes at a time without my blood pressure skyrocketing. So I started walking 5 minutes 4 times a day. The next week I walked 6 minutes 4 times a day. The next week 7 minutes 4 times a day, increasing it a minute until I got up to 30 minutes 4 times a day. And then I was taking the bus here and there and I had gotten a job, so I figured I was walking 4 to 6 miles every day between buses.
No, I love that. So slowly building up. Yeah, and there's people that can't walk from basically their couch to the bathroom. Those people have to start walking like a minute, as much as they can, like 10 times a day, and then slowly build up, and that really helps. Any other questions or comments? Yes?
Yeah, we were talking about vegetarian, vegan. As a vegan, if you ever have periods where you feel fatigued a lot, tired, what causes that?
Oh, there's a million. Oh, the question is, if you're a vegetarian or vegan and you feel fatigued, what causes that? That's hard to know. One thing, people always ask me about B12 and other vitamins. I check my B12 just for the heck of it, so I can tell people it's never low. There's so much B12 everywhere. Fatigue could be from thyroid, bad sleep, stress. There's a million things, so it's hard for me to answer that. But most people, when you're on a really clean diet, we didn't talk about this, but people have the sugar high, the sugar low, and then the fat food coma, which makes people feel super sluggish. When people start eating really clean, they're like, the one thing they always say is like, man, I feel so much more energetic. I feel more bright-eyed, mentally clear. So that's typically what happens when your diet gets cleaned up. Yay!
But my skin seemed to get more dry.
Mhm.
And I was asking my sister, and she said, well, eat more avocados and things like that. What would you recommend?
Yeah, I'm going to refer you to my wife or some other women. You don't want advice on your skin from me. I'm just being honest. I can speculate like crazy, but some things though is like omega 3, 6, 9s. People they take high dose of those supplements actually have their joints are more lubricated, the eyes are more lubricated, and their skin seems to be less wrinkly. So that usually though. Yeah, you can get that as a supplement. Most people don't get that from fish, like fatty fish. So that can happen. Flaxseed has it, and there's a seaweed-based omega 3, 6, 9 that you can get as well. All right, this is going to be the last question because there's actually a book club that's going on downstairs in 1 minute. But yeah, so this is going to be bad. As a general rule, supplements make your wallet skinnier, not you. They make your urine more expensive. They don't really help. There's been 3 big multivitamin studies that have no impact on heart attack, stroke, or death unless you have active cancer, and it's probably because you're on chemo. Everyone else's diet is good enough where you don't need supplements. So I recommend to my patients, save the money, put your time, effort, money into other things that are going to make a bigger difference. I have lots of people that have 20 meds and 20 supplements. The time to manage all those is just crazy. But once again, thanks for coming. Live stream crew, thanks for watching. Hope to see you next month. Good night.